Hey everyone, I'm rather incoherent, and I want to know what the fastest mode of transportation in Subnautica is. Now, there are 4 methods of transportation I'll be trying out today, and there are several that I won't. So first, let's go over who's not getting tested, who is getting tested, what are the rules, what are the routes. Then I'll get right into the conclusion, because that's the most interesting part, that's what you're really here for. And at the end, we'll go through all of the testing and I'll comment on how everything performed. We're not testing walking or sprinting. They're both trash, 0 out of 10, would not recommend get back in the water. Now, being back in the water is a good start, but the simple fact is that swimming is terrible and doesn't move you particularly quickly. Now, swimming on the surface of the water does actually move you faster, but it's still miserably slow. And as much as I love the Seaglide is amazing, it is objectively slower than the Seamoth, so there is no need to test it. They both move through the exact same mechanisms, and as a consequence, you can just use math to figure out how much longer the Seaglide would take. The Cyclops really didn't enjoy me stacking prawn suits on top of it, did it? But that's fine, because we weren't going to test the Cyclops anyway. It clips into things constantly, doesn't go particularly fast in the first place, not that you'll ever be going at top speed on account of its constant running into things. And again, it's just slower than the Seamoth, so there's no need to test it. And lastly, flying on birds is very, very fast, but it's also incapable of going down, so unfortunately the bird is disqualified. So let's talk about our contestants in today's time trials. First, we have the Seamoth. Your standard form of going fast in Subnautica, everyone's had one, everyone's loved it, it's a great vehicle, but sadly today I doubt it will be the victor. No, today it's going to be the bar, where we judge other things by how they compare to the Seamoth. And so far we've disqualified quite a few people for being objectively worse, so that's a good start for it. Next up, we have the prawn suit Spider-Man with dual-wielded grappling arms and the upgraded jump jets. It's one of the most fun movement methods in the game, and with practice and favorable biomes, it can also be one of the fastest. It's very, very fun, but not necessarily obviously better than the Seamoth. However, I do expect it to beat it, but we'll get more into why it's going to be a close competition shortly. Now, these two are just parts of the game. There's no argument against them being in this contest. However, this Seaglide I'm holding isn't normal. No, it's a special Seaglide, and it moves rather quickly. See, there's a bug called the Super Seaglide. If you leave a base that is currently in the process of flooding, for instance, if you were to enter a fully flooded base, deconstruct the hatch, reconstruct the hatch, and then leave, the game's not really sure if you're running or swimming, so it just sort of shrugs its shoulders and puts the two speeds on top of each other, resulting in you moving very quickly indeed. And this will be our third contestant. Now, if bugs seem a little bit unfair to you, then maybe our fourth contestant will too. This is the modded prawn suit. Much the same as our previous prawn suit, only this one has something special. It's got the prawn suit grappling arms Mark II. These shoot out further, faster, pull you in quicker, and have shorter cooldowns, letting you move even faster than the previous prawn suit did, and it is a blast to use. It is legitimately the most fun I've had in Subnautica and my entire current playthrough, just playing around with this. I didn't intentionally build my base as a jungle gem, but it works out well for one, and this thing is just incredible. So there are really 2 points of these time trials. One, yes, is to see what's the fastest, but I'm gonna be honest with you, I already know that Super Seaglide's gonna beat these two. It's sort of 2 competitions side by side. First, I want to compare the prawn suit and the Seamoth and see which of the fair modes of travel is the better. And more importantly, I want to compare the prawn suit without practicing it. Because I know in the right biomes or with enough practice the prawn suit will go faster, but in a real game, I'm just like using one as a general mode of transportation. Do I have to practice the prawn suit for it to be better, or will my first or second attempt still be as fast or faster than the Seamoth? And the other competition is the complete opposite. Rather than wanting to compare like, can I do this without practice? I want to see if anything can beat the Super Seaglide, because this thing is just ridiculous. It's the main mode of transport in speedruns for a reason. And I think that the upgraded grappling suit arms can actually manage to do that, if you practice enough. So I'm not going to be comparing an unpracticed run to the Super Seaglide here. I'm going to be trying to practice a route with the prawn suit Mark II grappling arms and see if I can get to a time that is beating Super Seaglide. So that's our 3 goals. Generally, what's the fastest mode of transport? Can anything beat the Super Seaglide? And is a prawn suit without practice better than a Seamoth? Now, let's talk about the race. We're going to be doing 2 separate races. One with unfavorable biomes for grappling hooks, and one with very favorable biomes for grappling hooks. Our first race, ignore the Reaper Leviathan, is going to start here at the teleporter, go up to the beacon at the mountain, and then 2 kilometers away to the habitat that you just saw on the edge of the Grand Reef. To show you that in slightly clearer terms, our first race goes from here in the mountains, around the mountain to here, and then all the way down to here where my habitat is. And our starting point is going to be from the edge of this platform. Now that first race is terrible with the grappling hooks. We go in and out of kelp forests and safe shallows, we're never going down, we never have good visibility. It's rough on grappling hooks. But the second race is designed to be good for grappling hooks. We're going to start at the same point the last race ended, at my base. We're going to go from the moon pool down into the Grand Reef, to the Degassi habitat, into the Lost River, through it to my base, and then all the way out to the Lava Zone East entrance. And again, to show it to you on the map, we are starting from here, going down, into the habitat, into the Lost River, and then the Lost River we're going up through the base, around, through the turn, and all the way to the Lava Zone East entrance. Now, to be honest with you, there's a lot of information in this video, but I think what most people care about is how fast can this thing really go? Can anything beat the Super Seaglide? At the very least, that's what I care about. That was my incentive for making this whole video, is to see if you could ever go faster than a Super Seaglide. So we're going to start with the conclusion. Can you go faster than a Super Seaglide? With enough practice, can these modded arms beat the base game glitch? So let's get right into that. Our time to beat from the Super Seaglide for the second race, the one that's supposed to be favorable for prawn suits, is 2 minutes and 7 seconds. If that seems crazy fast, it's because it is. Now, stuff like this, where I'm grappling off of the submarine and the jelly rays, is like kind of crazy, but as I kept practicing this, I had to practice it for nearly 3 hours, it sort of became second nature to view fish as mobile platforms. Only large fish. If you hit a small fish, it's actually detrimental. Something really funny is that when I posted this to Reddit, the clip of just this speedrun, the most common question was, wait, why is your game loading in that fast? And it actually has encouraged me to like look into it and make a performance video specifically, because it is actually weird that my game loads this fast, and I didn't realize it until I had it pointed out to me. Getting back on the subject of grappling fish though, there are 2 main things that can happen that cause this grappling system to lose a lot of speed. Well, 3. One of them is that you mess up, because unlike every other thing we're testing, grappling is skill-based. If I do this run 100 times, I'll get 100 different times. They won't all take the same duration. Whereas the Seaglide is gonna go pretty much the same speed all the time. Same with the Sea Moth, the Super Seaglide, they're all linear, unlike this. But there's a glitch where if you're shooting your grappling hook at something too far away, I think it has to do with it loading in its close range textures as the grappling hook hits it, but whatever the case, sometimes your grappling hook just goes through the ceiling and doesn't connect, and I don't know why. There's also the ability to just grapple a fish by accident, which is funny, but it means you're not going forward. What's worse, if it hits you, if you don't release the grapple, it'll cancel your momentum. Now this turn we're going through is hell. It's like ground level and a slight zigzag, so it kills all your momentum. Then you come out, if you have enough momentum you can grab onto this, but now you're just in the air with no clear grapple targets. And as you can see, I almost completely run out of momentum here. I barely get in range of this bonefish to keep myself going forward. Despite practicing this for like 2 or 3 hours, I never found a consistent strat to make that turn at high speeds. There are some things where doing it in the prawn suit just sucks, and that turn's a great example of it. But like I said at the beginning of this, the time to beat for getting within 10 meters of this beacon is 2 minutes, 7 seconds. And we got to it at 2 minutes flat. And I'm absolutely thrilled about that, because after spending 2 hours stuck at a 2:10, I was beginning to wonder if I would ever actually beat it. Now, moving right on to the races and the testing data, this is our first race from the mountains to the Grand Reef that's meant to suck for grappling hooks. And the top, we have our 2 relatively boring straight line clips. The left side goes hella fast, the right side just goes pretty fast. And as you can see immediately, especially with the shorter, weaker base game grapples, it is rough just getting started here. With the modded grapples, you can sort of build enough momentum to throw yourself past these obstacles that you're not well suited towards. But the normal baseline grapple hooks, you just sort of have to clumsily climb around them, and it can be agony. And it's not going to get better. Throughout this whole route, there's never really any downhill areas, there's never open areas with lots of things to grapple off of. Quite the opposite, you're dipping in and out of the safe shallows in the kelp forest. There are constant slight changes in elevation that you get caught on. You always have bad visibility of what's coming up next. It's just rough the whole way beginning to end. And looking at the top 2, you can see that the Sea Moth is getting absolutely crushed by the Super Seaglide, almost as badly as the Super Seaglide is crushing my frame rate at times. And again, going back down to the bottom, you can see that it's a lot about skill. There are times when the base grapple hooks are actually going faster than the modded grapple hooks, because you can just go so fast if you never get caught on something. And doing that consistently is such a hard thing that it almost makes it sort of irrelevant to recommending a mode of travel, right? Because yes, I can go faster than the Super Seaglide with the modded grappling hooks. But does it really count if you had to spend 3 hours to do it? The Super Seaglide was done in 2 minutes and 7 seconds. Then you speed ran for 3 hours to catch up. The Super Seaglide has probably already finished the game. So, to some degree, how well something works without practicing it is relevant to how fast it actually is in real gameplay terms. And in real gameplay terms, it's a good thing that the grappling hooks are so fun to use, because at times, they are deeply, deeply frustrating. Something I forgot to mention earlier involving getting hung up on bad grapples is that, yes, you absolutely can clip onto things that you don't see on your screen. Very frequently, you'll try to grapple something, and your grapple will instantly catch on an object that on your screen is clearly not next to your hands, but the hitbox is just big enough, whether it's for the grappling hook launch or the model itself, that you get caught immediately, and now rather than moving forward, you've anchored yourself in place. There's so much frustrating about trying to go fast with the prawn suits, and that's sort of the fun of it. Because being Spider-Man shouldn't be easy, it feels like you have to earn it. I think that's part of why it's so satisfying to move with the grappling hooks. And as we can see, to no great surprise, the Super Seaglide has easily crushed this one, and the prawn suit with the upgraded grapples came in second place. The interesting thing is that the Seamoth and this god-awful grappling hook run are actually pretty close. I was thinking that the grappling hooks would probably lose in bad biomes, because this is the first run I ever did with them. The very first thing I recorded testing the grappling hooks was this trek through bad biomes, and I was sure that the Seamoth was going to absolutely crush it. And to be fair, the Seamoth does win. But this is about as bad of a Spider-Man run as you can possibly have in the most detrimental possible biomes. And over the course of a nearly 4-minute run, the prawn suit was only 20 seconds slower? Our final times are pretty hard in favor of the Super Seaglide, at 134 for the Super Seaglide, 236 for the upgraded prawn suit, still a minute behind, 60% slower. And then they both crushed the Seamoth, which came in at 3 minutes 24, and that awful prawn suit run only came in a little bit further behind at 3 minutes 40. Only 16 seconds slower in a 3.5 minute run is not that bad. Moving right on to the second race, this is the Grand Reef and Lost River race. This one should be a lot more beneficial to my prawn suits. But you'll immediately see that I don't yet know the optimal route. I haven't figured out the strats where you hurl yourself off of your base into the abyss and you just quickly fall. So instead I'm doing a substantially slower strategy of grappling down the mountain wall. It's not terrible, but you can go a lot faster than this. And as you can see, because I can't really tell where I'm going because my face is smushed into the wall, I'm making a lot of mistakes. This is also done at a point in time before I really understand how this area is laid out exactly. So rather than taking super tight turns like I did in that 2-minute time, I'm sort of loosely curving around to roughly where I need to be. You can definitely see that I have nowhere near the same level of understanding as to where I should be in all this. I lose so much time on the modded grappling hook run just to sort of being in the wrong place. And this is a legitimate downside of grappling hooks I haven't talked about yet, is that you kind of can't watch where you're going very effectively. You've got to be looking at where you're grappling, not where you want to be. Sure, you want to go into Lost River, but you need to be looking at the grappling point that you're going to be turning off of, and if you aren't doing that, then you're not going anywhere. So it's this weird dance of awareness and grappling speed that you have to do that takes a long time to get really, truly good at. All the same though, same story is repeating itself as in the previous runs. The Super Seaglide is torn off to a ridiculous lead. The modded grappling hook is the only one that's even remotely close, but they're still left in the dust comparatively. And then there's an actual race happening between the Seamoth and the prawn suit. If you direct your eyes to the bottom left for the modded grapples, you'll see what I like to call a tragedy in two fish. Because that's what I mean when I say that grappling into fish is just awful. You don't just not go forward, it cancels your forward momentum, and then they spin around and make you feel like a jackass. It's just salt in the wound for no reason. So what are the conclusions of this video, really? Because at this point in time, you can see the Super Seaglide crushing the second race as well. And I've been talking sort of cynically about whether or not practice counts as going fast or going the slowest. My real answer is sort of 3 parts, I guess. First, what is the fastest mode of travel in the game? Technically speaking, the Super Seaglide, because the modded grapples aren't in the game. Including the modded grapples, it's technically the modded grapples, but it's so hard to do that realistically it is still the Super Seaglide. However, both the modded grapples and the base grapples are technically the fastest legitimate forms of movement in their game. The Super Seaglide is a glitch, after all. Meaning you can argue that the Super Seaglide is cheating, and then the fastest forms of movement in the game are also the most fun and the most skill-intensive. So, if you just care about going the fastest, always pick the Super Seaglide. If you just care about having a fun movement system, always pick the best grappling hooks your game has access to. And if you want to go the fastest without using glitches, then always use the best grappling hooks you have access to. Because the reality is that first run with the grappling hooks in bad biomes, that was almost as fast as the Seamoth. And that was me doing it terribly. I can easily do it faster than the Seamoth if I practice it for any amount of time. And unfortunately, when you look at this run through Lost River, you can really see what I was talking about during my first run, where that curve is just brutal and it kills all your momentum. The PrawnSuit was set up to tie or beat the Seamoth rather easily, and then it just floundered and lost all of its speed coming out of that turn. So is there a lot of deeply frustrating stuff happening with Spider-Man suit? Yes, of course there is. But it's also the most satisfying to play, the most satisfying and fulfilling to learn, and if you're good at it, it's faster. But more importantly than anything, it's just fun. Lost River is tedious. I dare you to rewatch this video and only pay attention to the Seamoth screen slowly moving in straight lines. It's just not fun to use the Seamoth or the Cyclops. But grappling around like Spider-Man makes these massive lengthy caves fun to traverse. And in spite of all the failures that this grappling hook run had, it still managed to win in the favorable biome. Bad runs with the PrawnSuit are just pretty close in speed to the Seamoth, and if you're good at it, it's going to crush it. And with all of that said, I think it's time to call it a wrap. For our final times, our practice run with modded grapples got all the way down to 2 minutes flat. The Super Seaglide was a 2:07. The unpracticed modded grapples was a 2:59. The normal grapple hooks were a 4:22, and the Seamoth was a 4:30. I've been rather incoherent. I hope you found all of this entertaining or helpful. If you did, then consider liking and commenting. All that really helps the channel grow. Subscribe if you haven't, blah, blah, blah. You all know the YouTube algorithm drill. Support me on Patreon if you want to. You don't, I know. Gonna throw it out there anyway. And I'll see you in the next one.